So these are the bodies. This is the infrastructure through which we have to implement all the incredibly good research and work that everybody who's presented here and is about to present here. That is, you are the organs of action. How's that sound?
I think I'm just a figurehead, really. I'll take all the credit if it's coming, but I'll also take all the slack. But no, it's. I mean, as chair, you're only as good as your team, right? And everything that's done. And I think given where we were 5 years ago, I think we've seen a lot of growth in interest and research in cholangiocarcinoma, and then there've always been people working in silos doing their own thing. I mean, you and Juan with your ABC trials, and me with my epidemiology and stuff, but it was never really joined up, not in the UK. And so I think joining it up in the UK was a very positive step. And similarly in Europe, I think ENSCA was a great idea. And I know Jesus and Vincenzo have been really incredibly working hard, and I've been involved very peripherally with it. But I think you just got to work collaboratively, nationally and internationally. I think having a cohesive UK network is really important, and then if you're united as a national network, and then you can then work internationally, I think it's great.
Yeah, I think that no matter, at what level, I think that just joining together, it's always good. If not, just for really exchanging ideas. And you see sometimes that what is really very normal for you as a clinician and the clinical trialist might not be for a researcher. So I think it has helped to streamline some pathway. Where I think I really would like to go and see in the future is really engaging a little bit more with pharma and industry to really create that kind of link between all the researchers that we are doing. When do they become really of interest for a pharma to take it over and make it applicable for the patients, because that is where we could really make a difference. So I think that it would be nice to.
I mean, there's always but there's so many meetings now. Is there too much now? So,
yeah, no, but I agree with that. But I think that what I'm talking about is more like really sitting down together and understand both the perspective and understanding, where, because at the moment I think that the moving forward from a basic discovery to a clinical implication for patient is more given to the chance of a group that has some relationship or not. If we can formalize that and understand what can make it happen, maybe that might be useful at all different levels.
Yeah.
So I mean, I completely agree. The pharma link is critical. How can you make yourself that much more attractive to pharma?
Well, it's difficult. Maybe we should ask pharma. I think one of the initiatives that we have tried to work on, and that has been more difficult, but we are trying to have as an aim for the future, is really sitting down in a workshop where we can hear their idea and how they would pick up from some basic research, and what are the criteria that would make a research interesting and inspiring to them to be investing, so that the basic researchers and the translation and the clinician could in some way know which criteria to follow, and then pharma knows where to go and pull out the data as well. That could be one idea, but happy to
easier
share
said than
thoughts.
done from the sounds of it, but yeah.
So if you may think of the most important thing, if there is one, to push through, which is, okay, because both of you presented research, clinical research, basic research, translational collaboration, but there are many things. There are some of them that are more important, or you are going all of them?
I think in the UK, I think there'll be two things. I think on the clinical level, I and our committee are really keen that we level up the care equitably for patients with cholangiocarcinoma on the back of the new guidelines that are coming out on the clinical level. And on the research level, I think the priority for me in the UK is to have collaborative joined up research, and so, for example, access to each other's samples, multi-center studies, where because I think it's still a relatively rare condition. If you're going to do high quality translational work, you need numbers. But also in terms of the really basic science, to know what other people are doing, and so to really create an establishment, a network of basic scientists as well. And I think that, to me, is a priority in the UK.
I think that also harmonization of the activity is quite important. I mean, obviously, at the European level, the clinical implementation is guided by international guidelines, and we don't really need to replace that. And obviously, there is also the difficulty of having different countries, as we have heard yesterday. But even from a research perspective, harmonizing, the way we think is important to lead some research, or think about priorities and how we can join and compare all the data together. That is quite important for making the step.
Okay.
If I may add, so we had this discussion in the Netherlands about how do we encourage that collaboration is enforced without giving away ownership of data and tissue, because that's what actually is sometimes the driving force why it's not going on. And so there was a grant done 2 years ago, I think. It's called FORCE, and they have done exactly that. So they have thought about how can we keep the data and the tissue at the ownership of the institution, let's say, but then still have it combined so we know exactly what's available. And then you ask the research question, and then you go and ask for the data and the tissue for that research question. And therefore, you don't have to make an upfront decision on what you're giving away, but you just give your intention and you make it legally and digitally available, let's say. So there is this, everything is lined up, that if the question comes, it can be given away. And that is I think it's a better way for collaboration, and because otherwise you're depending on the goodwill of centers or other groups, and you don't want to be in your way, you don't want to be competitors of the same thing, you want actually collaboration. I thought that was a very good idea, and if you like the initiative owner of this thing, she will be definitely available for a presentation next year or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree with that. In fact, I think with the clinical registry, we have seen it's easier to share some information, clinical data set, but then when it comes to sharing biosamples, obviously, there is the precious jealousy of everyone. And so I think that is a way where probably we need to put more effort.
Yeah, so just to get you, so they spend, I don't know, a huge amount of money just on the legal bits and pieces and the contracts. And so that was fantastic that they had the money to do that basic work, which I think is very easy to, because it was based on the European way we work anyway. So it is meant to be extended outside the Netherlands anyway.
I think what you have to be careful on is also that you don't end up just to support different biobanking of samples without a clear idea behind, because it's experience of everyone that we just waste of the samples because we put some blood there and then we don't know what to do because it's stored in the wrong way. So I think that these kind of international association are really useful to understand where we can prioritize and how we can prioritize the collection and then apply for these grants. Great.
One.
Morning all. Just as an extension really of what Heinz-Josef was saying, the strengths here really come from collaboration, so UK-wide collaboration, European collaboration. And I think where we really would benefit from that collaboration is in drug development. You talked about closer working with industry. And one of the things with the molecular subgroups that are now emerging, we don't know what the natural history is of those subgroups. And I think strengthening and really getting depth in that, through the registries, to understand what is the natural history of some of these subgroups will ultimately, I think, be able to provide context for regulators to then approve drugs in very rare subgroups of a rare cancer.
Yeah, I mean, we've not really discussed that in our committee about having a clinical data set like ENSCA have done, and I think, you know, that's something that we should consider.
Well, I mean, I think we should we should really, you know, work with ENSCA, and the UK should contribute to that one.
Yeah.
But I think there's a great resource there.
Obviously, those data are not fully available for the 3,000 patients we have, as you know, this was not something that was routinely done. I assume that as we go ahead and we have genomic profiling more easily integrated into the clinical practice, those data might be available. And then obviously when you pair those kind of data set with data set like the BILCAP, where you know you now have the possibility to have those information, then you might really get better data to understand how a clinical trial setting reflects into the real life.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you know, these data sets should not be separated.
Yes.
They are much stronger
Yeah,
put together.
exactly.
The
So
best, you know,
But I would say-
publications out there are molecular data linked
Yeah.
to
And the point I was making is not that we should be separate to ENSCA, definitely should be part of the ENSCA program, but I think our contribution to the ENSCA database is not complete, is it?
No, absolutely. I think that more centers should participate. And I think what is really, really important is that there is an engagement of more multidisciplinary, at a more multidisciplinary level. I mean, I think that one of the major limitation of the ENSCA register at the moment is that obviously we are centers which we are very much involved into, had an interest in pathology, in surgery, so, or you know, some specific center of expertise in oncology, and you might not have a nice representation of everything. So the more people join into this data set, and the more useful they become.
One of the, I mean, we've been trying to do this, Jesper may speak about it a bit later on, but we've been trying to do this with Jesper, and there are still hurdles in terms of, or maybe you can speak about it as Jesper, but you know, standardization of data. So standardization of clinical data, I mean, clinical data is almost never standardized. And standardization of molecular data, you know, how do you, and for the ENSCA database, Laura is like the most careful curator ever, but it is extremely dependent on her to do that.
Yeah, and also depends on, obviously, you know, the raw data, you know, the analysis you do are always as good as the data that you input. So she then does an excellent job to do a quality control of the data, but obviously depends on, you know, every one of us that we are really, you know, putting in the right data. And I mean, that only depends on us.